Restaurants Canada is demanding that Ottawa extend the deadline for the Canada Emergency Business Account loan repayment.
The organization says the January 18th deadline will have devastating consequences for the already reeling food service industry. Restaurants Canada says the industry is struggling to rebound from the pandemic for several reasons, including rising food costs, and that 53% of restaurants are operating at a loss or barely breaking even, compared to 10% pre-pandemic. And for more on this, we're joined live by Kelly Higginson, President and CEO of Restaurants Canada. Kelly, thank you for joining us on the show today. A recent survey conducted by your team finds 1 in 5 restaurants with a COVID-era loan, they are on the brink of shutting down. What are you hearing from these businesses who are struggling to keep the lights on?
We're hearing a lot of stress and anxiety, really. It's been a real struggle to get through the post-pandemic recovery period for the industry. The volatility, the uncertainty, the rising food costs, but it's not just food costs. Every aspect of operating a restaurant has significantly increased in the last 3 to 4 years. So that's where we see that 53% of operators are operating at a loss or barely breaking even versus that 10% pre-pandemic. So with that slow recovery period, it's not something you can just turn a light switch on and everything came back to normal. We have had a slow recovery, and we all have seen that, whether it's in tourism, slow recovery, people getting back to regular habits. We are impacted disproportionately by all of these aspects. So with that, we are asking for more time for the industry to recover so they can keep that forgivable portion of the loan.
Okay, but Kelly, the federal government has rejected the call to extend the loan repayment deadline, noting that the deadline's already been extended twice, 2 times. The small businesses now have to pay up by January 18th. So what's your new message to the federal government?
We are reiterating the same message, and I realize we sound like a broken record, but the issues have not let up for the industry. So we have to continue to communicate that to the government, that we need that year extension again, and we recognize and appreciate the extensions that we have been given. But the reality is we have the data to show it, that the industry has not had the time it's needed to fully recover. This is the 4th largest private employer in the country, a $100 billion industry that impacts communities from coast to coast to coast, with 96 cents from every dollar spent in a restaurant going back into the community. So there is very real reasons why the government should be investing in this industry.
You laid out some of the challenges that come at a time like this. Inflation still very high, food prices way up, and there's talk of a recession, Kelly. Who do you think this is going to hurt the most? What types of restaurants?
It's the independent operators. We have 82% of independent operators who have an outstanding CEBA loan. So these are really the cultural fabric that we see throughout so many communities, bringing so much, interesting vibrancy to communities across the country. These are the operations that are really struggling the most.
Okay, Kelly, the finance minister argues that it's been flexible by extending the deadline twice, noting that not all the money has to be paid by the deadline. Only 2/3 in businesses that can't will be allowed an extra 2 months to refinance their loan. Does that offer any comfort?
Well, it doesn't, given what we're hearing from our operators, and that most of them are hearing a hard no from their banks. So not only a hard no from the federal government extending this, but very few of them, from what we're hearing, are being able to refinance this with their banks, which means they're forced to take the option of refinancing with the 5% interest rate with the government, but that's an automatic losing of that forgivable portion of the loan, which is so important. They did not plan on having an extra $20,000 sitting around after so many challenging years trying to recover from a very unique period in our history.
Kelly Higginson with Restaurants Canada, thank you so much for your perspective today. We so appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you for having me.